Good morning, everyone. I'm Sara Rizvi, the group editor for ITP.net, and on behalf of the technology team at ITP Media Group, I welcome you all to today's roundtable. This roundtable, titled Future of the Classroom, is a part of the Education Week that started on 13th of September, and today it commences with a panel discussion with experts from the education sector and technology providers. First, I would like to start with Dr. Alex, Inas, and Jan. If you can elaborate on what the digital campus looks right now and the challenges that educators are facing in enabling this transformation. So, Dr. Alex, to you.
Thank you for the question. So just to put things into perspective of where things are, we actually found out where things are on March the 4th. And I know this roundtable is going to reflect a little bit on the impact of the pandemic, but on March 4th, we first got wind that we were going to have to shut down. We were already talking about it early in February. So what we did is we ran a pilot. We ran a 2-day pilot, sent all the students home, kept the faculty to teach in empty classrooms and find out our readiness, which points to your question a bit. And then we had a spring break, which gave us some time to play catch up. So from March the 4th to May the 7th, that whole spring semester was a true indication of our readiness and where we stood in this digital classroom, whether it was online or in face-to-face, because digital still has an element of face-to-face to it. So we've, over that period of time, we kept 23,000 students enrolled and engaged in our classes. We delivered over 84 million minutes, 1.4 million hours of education. We had 1.5 million student logins, and we only used 10% of HCT's capacity. The bottleneck was our major service provider, of which I'll remain unnamed. But once we got through that, it then became a very individual situation with the family's own Wi-Fi systems to be able to handle what we were going to push through there. And ironically, it wasn't until 9 o'clock on March the 4th, I'll never forget that, when our CIO got the phone call from our provider and said, we got the approval from the regulator, we can open up the pipeline. Mm-hmm. So our readiness was pretty good. It was the infrastructural readiness to handle what we were going to pump through there that became a question mark. And we've been building this thing for about 3 years to go to, and we formally introduced it this fall, our hybrid model. And as I said at the outset, HCT is not just about a credential, it's about a job offer for employment and employability. And there's certain aspects of our applied education that are amenable to technology and some that aren't. And so we're now finding our way through that middle ground on that. So I think what we invested in, we're in good shape in that sense.
So, Inas, what would you say that have you faced any challenges in the transition to a hybrid model into digital learning?
Yes, of course. Actually, as Dr. Alex just mentioned, we all get a heads up that in March we are going to have the lockdown and we have to transfer to digital. When we start this conversation with the management and discuss, we know that we have the technology. The problem is our faculty knows about everything? Are they really familiar? Because when they know about it, it's not like actually using it fully 100% in all their teaching. And this is as well for the students. So we used the time before the lockdown and we did an intensive training for all faculty members online and workshops, and then simulations, 1 week simulations for the online classes with the students during the semester break, where they use that one to give them the chance to train and use the simulations and open the connections and again check the pipeline. Are we good enough? Are we able to handle these things? And we found some challenges. Alhamdulillah, it was good, and we found a way that we could upgrade as well the internet, make sure that all the setup is ready, and we are still learning. It's a learning process. Now you have the tool, but you have to make it simple and easy for the student, for all kind of people. You have simple users, you have power users. These variations, you have to consider all levels, either in students or in faculty as well. So this is what we are trying, either through surveys, questions, focal groups, to listen to them. And we have like regular meetings to see how we can support more the teaching and learning. I believe we have to help the students to become self-learners. They have to have the passion to ask and learn. You give them the tool, the instructor is away. You have to teach the instructors how to be a YouTubers, because they are the best to attract thousands of people to watch them. How are you going to teach the faculty members to be this kind of person? So it's not the tool as much as learning these new skills.
So we see that infrastructure readiness, ease of use, and availability of the right training are some of the challenges that the educators are seeing. Now, Jan, I would put this same question to you. What would you say that the digital campus, what it is, and what challenges as a technology provider do you see they may face that you all are working towards?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think with this pandemic, indeed, things had to happen overnight. And I mean, although quite a number of universities were ready and had technology prepared in lab situations, I mean, rolling this out in like no time, and then asking us to help them with some solutions to get to that point was certainly a challenge, because we also had to rapidly scale up our environments just to support those universities. So it was also a challenge on technology providers to keep up with the rapid need and speed that would need to happen. And what I've seen, and I've seen it also personally in my family, is also that adapting to this technology is an easy thing. I mean, I won't say it happens overnight, but it happens really quickly. Students really adapt to it. Professors also quickly get on board. The challenge will be, and you highlighted a little bit on this, how do we use this optimal? Because you might have students that might get lost in isolation. I mean, they're at home or somewhere in a cubicle or in a room, maybe far away from their family, certainly in this kind of region. That happens a lot, and they get like isolated from the rest of the world. They miss their friends, they miss their students, they miss people to talk to in real life, because talking over Zoom or any other method or Teams is always different. And getting those people included into the conversation, into whatever is given as course, will be the biggest challenge, and might impact on how students look at this experience of the past months, because they might feel like I can consume what is given to me, but how do I put it in practice? How do I learn it in a team environment? How do I make sure that I can absorb it and apply it in a practical way? Because as you rightfully said, universities have one goal, which is try to create a person that is ready to go on the market to have a job. The difficulty is, what will that job be in 10 years from now, let alone in 20 years from now? So we need to educate them using technology in being a team player, in being able to absorb knowledge in a way that they can use afterwards, whatever happens. And that might be the most difficult thing with this event to make sure that it really happens. So technology, it is there, it evolves, it gets better. We as technology providers, we can ramp up and speed up quickly. We can provide whatever is needed. How do the universities applies it so that it becomes relevant for the student to become a human being? That will be the biggest challenge.
Are there any other challenges that Shant, Saif, Dino, or Mayank, any of you would like to highlight before we move forward? Is there anything you would like to add to the challenges that you may have been presented by, particularly by the education sector, that they were facing it and you had to work towards it? Is that there anything that you would like to add here?
I think so. The biggest challenge was not from a technology perspective, but it was from an adoption side. We had never got used to it. Homes were just to do your homework or assignments which were given in school. It was not to be your primary source of education. So the biggest challenge was both from imparting the education and absorbing that education side. And again, from a personal experience, my wife is a teacher and I have kids who are students. So I was watching both sides of the story, that there's a teacher at home who's trying to keep the focus of the students, and students who are trying to learn from a teacher who's still adapting to the new technologies, the new ways of imparting education. If we move it back to a work environment, as per a survey, only 6 to 8% of people living in this part of the world had ever worked from home, let alone those billion students in the world who all of a sudden got out of their classrooms and started learning from home. So it was more of a human challenge rather than a technological challenge, because technologies, solutions, and everything evolved with the experiences, the bandwidth, as mentioned. They started increasing, you started adopting, you started getting bigger screens, you started getting keyboards at home. So every house became an office environment with the paraphernalia.
Can I add? Sorry.
Sure.
Yes. It's just one of the challenges that we have is mainly the practical part. It's still not all field you can give a digital solution that the student can do at home or remotely or through that online session. This is something we also work on. There are some kind of classes that has to be on campus, or actually, for example, like dentistry. They have to have patient and treat them. You cannot treat them remotely. Yeah, these kind of things that how you have to adapt not only in technology but in other situations where you can help the student to learn.
When you wanted to say something.
So I think, in the UAE, of course, we are blessed with great Wi-Fi coverage and cellular networks. So, our challenges were probably slightly more first world in that sense. But, if you just look around the neighborhood in terms of the wider region of Middle East Africa, I think the problems were slightly more basic, right, in terms of access. I mean, if I'm the Ministry of Education in Ethiopia, and I've got 26 million children that I need to take care of, and 80% of them don't have access to the Wi-Fi, my problem is far more at the rudimentary level. So that initial bit of how do you solve access was a big part for a lot of governments and ministries. So even if you have the Wi-Fi network, how do you get one device to one student? Because that was not necessarily the case, and you don't have the means to start creating a BYOD policy at this stage. So how do you create the right device access? How do you create the right Wi-Fi or cellular network access? And then how do you create the ecosystems where all of this comes together, right? How do you speak to a telco provider to zero rate a solution so that you can actually give that access to that student? So these were some of the sort of even more fundamental problems that a lot of countries were facing. And then, of course, I think from a solutioning point of view, there are so many e-solutions out there that the question next was, do I take a disparate system or do I take one comprehensive learning management system? And if I've got a disparate set of solutions, how do I stitch them together so that they become meaningful? Because the first response was, of course, putting every student in front of a teacher through a collaboration tool like Zoom or through Teams or whatever. But that's just creating a virtual space. How do you recreate the brick and mortar environment in the bytes and pixel environment and have the faculty members actually the capability which was discussed here, to manage that environment in the way they used to manage a brick and mortar environment? So I think these were some of the more fundamental issues that a lot of countries were facing, which maybe the UAE was slightly ahead of the curve, so it didn't face it as much.
Now, we are all only at the beginning of this transformation, and there's so much more to happen now. The today's generation is very quick in picking up any advancements in technology. If we throw a new device at them, a new software, they're very quick to pick up. So, would you say that the I would come back to Ines and Dr. Alex. Are the educators prepared for this? I know HCT is an applied college, so you were already probably ahead of the curve. But in general, if we talk about the education system, were the educators ready to take on this challenge?
Well, I'll take issue a little bit with how you open the question by saying we're at the beginning of a transformation. The education system has been transforming digitally for 25, 30 years. And it started with videotape. I don't know if many people remember the term videotape, but we've been videotaping classrooms. And the whole correspondence, learning by correspondence and distance education was all videotaped back in the 70s and 80s. So all that happened is memory arrived. And you were able to put your video on memory. And as you said earlier, you could shrink it down and all that kind of stuff. So the education system's been at this thing for a long, long time. Then things like smartboards got introduced in the mid to late 90s. Okay, so this transformation has been going on and it will continue to go on. Okay, so here we are today where you have, as you said, these bring your own device kind of things. There was at one point, educational institutions tried to standardize by saying, okay, you buy a laptop as part of your tuition. And then that kind of blew up because you just couldn't keep track of the inventory and all this. Okay, bring your own device. Well, that introduces all sorts of interesting integration issues, but we get around those types of things. During that period of time, you had, and this is an old phrase, skunkworks, you had those faculty that were always dabbling, and they would bring along the faculty that wanted to be the sage on the stage, the old, I'm performing kind of thing. And you drag them along. You went from acetates on an overhead projector to PowerPoint, to all these kind of things. And some were still wanting to use acetates. In fact, some still want acetates in their classroom today. It's absurd. Okay. So you're dragging along the laggers, so you have the typical curve of early adopters and the laggards, and you're dragging these along. So what we've experienced now is that students are demanding from faculty that you can't be a laggard anymore. You got to be in the game. And ironically, and I hate to say it because I'm an engineer by training and background, it's the engineers that it sticks in the mud. Putting up that calculus equation or whatever, it seems to be a challenge to do it digitally or electronically and create excitement. All calculus has always had its challenges with being exciting. Whereas the health is kind of interesting because you introduce, mannequins. And mannequin technology has now been around for almost 20 years. And the health industry, the health sector, and education has adopted those types of things. The IT side of education, in terms of the classroom, they've kind of pulled things along and dragged it along. But then you look at other things like education. Like we have an education school. We teach teachers how to teach. And it's kind of interesting that what we're doing, we're getting phone calls from the K-12 system because what we're teaching our teachers to teach, they're lagging in the K-12 system. So we're kind of dragging and kicking and screaming us along the way. So you have people at these various stages of adoption, and I think that's going to be the case. Nobody's going to be at the same starting point, the same finish line. You're going to have this all along as things evolve over a period of time. I would say the one big challenge as part of that, the students want to, let's just say, they want to be entertained. They always did want to be entertained in the classroom. So that puts a big demand on content. And that is the most expensive single line item that the education system is going to have to deal with. How do you get that content into a form that's educational, it's easy to understand, it's got some entertaining elements to it, and it doesn't chew up your memory. That's why there's the Western digitals of this world, because you can consume massive amounts of memory through this, and then we have overlaying that is, well, what have you done for me lately? Oh, this was last updated 2 weeks ago. It must be old. So we have this challenge of trying to keep this thing going. So that, I think, is going to be the biggest thing as we go along, is to get that content to where it needs to be. This is going to be a massive investment by governments if you want to get to this point, but it's going to have to be an ongoing maintenance cost as we go forward on this thing.
Yeah, you wanted to add something?
No, I agree with and actually it's a bit challenging now with the faculty as an educator, but I think what I saw from our experience with Ashman University faculty, that with the situation they are passionate to learn and they want to know how to use this or that, or how to attract the students, because their nature is to teach and to learn. So I think maybe there are stages or levels, but at the end they are all of them in this. This is the only way now to deliver their knowledge to others.
Now, when we are talking about a digital classroom, we talk about the hardware and software requirements. What I feel, and I'm experiencing that at home with my kids, what gets ignored is sometimes many people still talk about video. I have seen that audio gets ignored, and since we have audio specialists here, I would like you to highlight how important audio versus video is in making sure that this conversation that the educators are talking about is seamless and without interruption.
Yeah, well, that's a very good point. We all know here that for us, video is naturally more important. As soon as you walked in, I'm sure you noticed the large screen over there, and you thought, I don't know, this looks like it has nice colors. So as soon as the video is on, that's the first thing you would notice. But a lot of people don't realize that in communication you have audio and visual. So a lot of people tend to miss out the audio part, especially in technology, because as I mentioned, historically video has been more dominant, and the technology has been progressing much faster than audio. At the end of the day, audio is audio. You hear what you hear. With the video, you can enhance the resolution. The better technology gets, the better resolution megapixels you're going to get. But it is for us, part of our activities. It was very crucial to educate everyone in terms of what's the benefit of audio, especially now in education. As everybody mentioned here, a lot of schools lag behind in terms of adopting technology, while some of them were ahead. I experienced this firsthand with my two kids. My son is in one school, my daughter is in another school. My son's school is already there. As soon as the pandemic hit, they had their own platform. They were online immediately, and everything went smooth. While my daughter's school, they were struggling with Zoom, Microsoft, and so on. They were just trying to figure out what to do. Now, don't get me started with the audio part, because that was just horrible. And now there's a responsibility towards these students, because if we don't focus on the important things, for example, audio is one of them, are we teaching them properly? Are we giving them the proper information? Is the information being properly transferred to them? So it is, and I repeat, yes, it has been very challenging for us to educate on the importance of audio, but I think now things are changing. What's helping now is that technology evolved as well. Before a microphone, for example, because we're talking about audio and we are microphone manufacturers, historically you had to have the microphone in front of you. If you steer away a little bit from the microphone, the audio is going to be poor, so it's not going to pick up your audio. But now things are changing. Microphones are becoming much better. You don't have to have a microphone in front of you. So, for example, in this room, we actually have a microphone that's recording our audio, and it's 100% pure and intelligible. Right. So these are the technologies that are helping customers understand that, all right, it doesn't have to be that complicated anymore. You don't have to engage with certain solution. Our responsibility towards our customers or whoever is using these technology is to make it easier for them. Again, technology doesn't have to be complicated. On the contrary, it has to make it easier for someone to use technology. And I think now things are changing. The pandemic obviously helped that, and people are understanding the value of good audio. If you're sharing some sort of information and your voice breaks up and you miss the crucial part of the information, you might lose a complete business deal, for example. So, yep, we had challenges in audio, but it's slowly shifting.
You would
I
like
think from our side, we just got a couple of SOS calls saying we need something to fix what's happening in our schools. We're closing, we're getting locked up, and we need our teachers we need our education to still go on. So, like Sean had mentioned, in many cases, a lot of institutions were super highly advanced, while others didn't really have any infrastructure from the IT aspect of things all the way to the audiovisual aspect. So it was a really good and interesting time for us because we actually were engaging with a lot of users. And I think Saman and Dr. Alex mentioned very important attributes. The educators itself, they were the biggest challenge that the IT professors had and IT teams had, was because they didn't really understand Zoom. Because a lot of them didn't really understand how Zoom worked for that instance and how they're going to take an actual in-classroom class and change it and convert it completely to a digital realm. As things have progressed, obviously the educators specifically had a lot more comfort in seeing how things are. And going back to what Shant said in terms of the spur of technology, can't really mention too many names now, but what has allowed that to happen is institutions now are talking about using AR and VR, augmented reality and virtual reality in classrooms, their engineering offices, and getting teams engaged. Because I think Mr. Alex nailed it when he mentioned, the students want to be entertained. How do you get these people entertained? How do you keep them engaged throughout the whole class? So I think overall, it was just, it's definitely going to be a learning curve across the board. And I think audiovisual is going to be playing a huge part in, keeping people entertained and engaged into the classroom setting.
So, what we heard from Dr. Alex about how such a lot of digital content is being generated. Storage is one of the challenges that educators may be facing. So, on that front, what would you say? How have the storage needs evolved now, and how can storage providers enable educators to make sure that they are ready for all the digital content that's getting created?
So if you look at the pandemic, everyone was taken for surprise. Nobody was prepared for it. From what I know of, except for Wimbledon, nobody had a pandemic insurance. So nobody else was ready for it. Yes, everybody had contingency plans. That what if, then what, sort of things. But this is something which took all of us by surprise. And the speed with which it happened, it gave no reaction time. So everyone had to react with time, absorb it, accept it, come up with the best options. And as you rightly mentioned, like none of these providers like Zooms, WebEx, Teams, anyone was prepared for it. And one of them took the most benefit because it was for free.
Yeah.
So even they kept on adding features and benefits on a weekly basis because they also never envisaged that it's going to happen. If you look at it from a storage perspective, anything which is digital needs to be stored somewhere, then accessed and then shared. So naturally, all of a sudden, when everything, that education for a billion population was going digitalized, the needs for storage also went up. And these needs were also not a standard one-size-fit-all solution, that everyone needed the same solution. These solutions started from a simple USB drive for the younger kids who are studying at home to make sure that they save it, upload it, for the teachers to take download these informations which were uploaded, to slightly senior students who were doing projects and assignments that they wanted to have a backup because now they were running into gigabytes of data.
Right.
To students who were not able to travel back, but they wanted to access. So the schools and colleges set up a cloud environment for their personal access. And even students were setting up cloud environments which they were sharing with their batchmates or teammates for the assignments which they were doing together. So all in all, if you look at it, the storage need became more significant. It always existed. But with this change in pandemic, a storage device became your school bag. So where you were sharing your handwritten notes with your friends, now digital assignments were getting shared. Things were getting more digitalized. The educational content, which as Dr. Alex mentioned, was getting updated on a weekly basis and new content was getting added. It was more getting downloaded, so you need bigger devices. From our side as a solution company on storage, because that's all what we do, provide digital storage, not only because of the pandemic, but because of the advancements in technology. If you look at it, 10 years back, the highest capacity which we could offer, and that was the highest capacity available, was a 2 terabyte of space. Today, we are talking about 20 terabytes in that same space. So within the last decade, and it's a result of that need. So it's not as if we have made a product and nobody needs it. We have made a product because the need is there. More and more digital content and richer content is getting. Same on an audio-visual basis. If you see the new devices, we were talking about 4K, now we are talking about 8K. Communications, we were talking about 4G is great, now we're talking about 5G. And all these are going to result in bigger sizes of data getting created, consumed, accessed, shared.
So now that we are talking about preparing, how prepared the students are, one of the most important things that we have just discussed is the importance of training both the faculty and the students. So, Jan, I would come to you for this. What type of training and certifications are important for colleges and university students? And definitely, technology is changing and evolving to, which is creating the need for newer skills. So that becomes an even bigger challenge because what you need today may not be something that you need tomorrow, or you need 10 things on top of it. So can you touch base on that?
Yeah, and thanks for the question. And it's a difficult question because we hardly can predict what kind of roles will be asked in the market within 5 years from now, sometimes even 2 years from now. The domain I'm typically working in is human resources, and I was reading a study 2 weeks ago where they predicted that within this and 5 years there will be about 15 new roles in human resources with names that we've never heard of before. Things like career coaches, content wizards, and all those kind of roles that today do not exist or we hardly see. So that makes it very difficult to predict, like, how should we train students or what kind of degree should we give them or what kind of backgrounds. The thing I see constantly coming back a lot is about data. And I mean, as you just hinted, that we've seen explosion of data. And that only is going to become more and more, not only because of the event that just happened, but because of the number of data that everybody's putting out there. So being able to analyze data, to work with it, will be probably a domain in many different subparts of an organization that will be highly demanded. So having students being able to work with data, interpret it, and manipulate it, is one of the things that we see a lot, not only in our industry, being software or IT, but also at our customer side, is something that we see happen a lot as a demand, actually within organizations. Now, how do we train our students? It's a bit weird because, and I'm not a fan of it, but I'm going to use it as an example. If you look at TikTok and the number of trainings you can find on TikTok, it stupefies me every day. It's a simple platform. Everybody can use it. I see moms and pops using it, sometimes giving, and I'm a bit into cooking, so I see recipes coming up where I'm like, no way. But everybody tries it quickly, and I see a lot of students trying it also. So I see this kind of platform or this kind of and capability being injected in what universities give, so that students also can contribute. Because we've talked a lot about professors and people in education providing content to the students, but I think the vice versa is something we're going to have to find a way to emulate and integrate more and more. Because students are, like I said a bit in the beginning, they're isolated, they're separated, they also want to contribute. And this generation, and the generations to come, I'm almost for sure, they love to contribute. They love to be recognized about what they contribute. So they want this kind of platform to contribute whatever they have to say on. And teaching them on how to do it, but how to do it in a concise way, how to bring across a message in a specific way. That's something I see universities also have a specific role to play. It's all about communication, and like I said, a lot about data and how to work with data. I see those two elements. If students can absorb them and be taught about them properly, that will help them whatever kind of jobs will be out in the market. Because like I said in the beginning, we can't predict it. So let's give them the basics. Let's train them on how to communicate, how to manipulate data, and they will find easily their way forward. And something I also said that when you asked me a little bit in the beginning, and that's going to be a hard thing. And I've seen it like with my kids. They love to work in teams physically in the past. How do they do that now virtually? How are we going to find a way between probably a hybrid way of virtually and hopefully soon going back to some kind of normal where physically working in teams can happen? Because in any organization later on, and being it an academic organization or a normal company, the only thing you get things done is in teams. You never get things done as a person. It happens because you come together, you find something, and you move forward as an organization, as a team. And there's a lot of talk about organizations will end existing as hierarchical. It will be more like teams working together, working on a task, then dissolving and working on another task. So how do we make sure that our students also get trained and used to do that virtually and non-virtually? And those three parameters will be a big thing and a big task for universities and for us as parents to make sure that our children become available and ready for whatever is coming in organizations.
Now, from what Jan just said, Mayank, can you talk about, highlight on the role of emerging and modern technologies in enhancing learning outcomes and the role that artificial intelligence and virtual experiences, because we're talking about hybrid models where kids are already not available in the physical classroom. So, what role are modern technologies playing there?
I think the answer really is captured in one sentence, right? It was earlier we used to do learning to know, right? So we were learning to get knowledge, but now it's knowing to learn. So how do you continuously keep yourself active so that you can keep learning? And again, like Dr. Alex as well said, the engagement side of it, right? So that's what's coming through together, right? So if you look at the sort of value chain of what was happening, you have technology coming into the classroom, but you need technology to really speak to all the three constituents: the student, the teacher, and the IT arm, right? So you need to create a framework for that. You don't need to have the digitized content because the content has to be interactive and engaging in a sense. And that's when the flipped classroom happens, because that's when the student can take charge of his or her journey, and the professor or the teacher becomes a facilitator over a sage on the stage kind of environment. But these are the fundamental building blocks. But the next era, just beyond the horizon, is going to be about virtual reality, right? Because if you look at what learning is nothing but a function of memory and understanding. And you have these things at play all the time. You absorb things, you then process them, you assimilate them, you then apply them, right? So if all of these things have to happen and memory and understanding has to interweave together, your sensory activities have to be very, very high for anchors to be created. So if strong anchors are created, both these things happen, effortlessly. And that's why virtual reality really scores. So there'll be an inflection point when 5G suddenly is omnipresent, and you will have virtual reality then suddenly, exponentially grow within the universities and schools. And at that stage, you will bring inclusivity as well in. So you're going to bring virtual reality, one, for the engagement, and two, for the inclusivity. So that today a student in Uganda could interact with a student in Singapore and solve a world problem. So that's what the beyond the horizon is going to be. And then once you layer that with artificial intelligence and reinforcement learning and machine learning, you're actually going to personalize each child's journey, and you're going to understand how that child is or student is going to learn. So that's really how the value chain is going to start evolving. Everything that we're seeing today are going to be the fundamental blocks, with the layer of virtual reality and artificial intelligence then really bringing education to a new level of sort of skill set.
Completely agree. Just mentioned, we're actually seeing a lot of users ask for this, wanting to know a little bit more about how to engage this into their facilities already. So it's exactly what you said. You said it's spot on. We're seeing it on a regular basis. Requests are coming for virtual reality, augmented reality on a regular basis.
So, since we're talking about training, Dino and Sean, can you highlight the role of the manufacturer in operational training?
So part of our responsibility is not just to provide the technology. It's about educating the user on the use of technology, the benefit of the technology. So it is definitely something that we put a lot of focus on. We have an institute called Shore Audio Institute. Of course, it's not accredited, but it is for the AV market. I strongly believe that if you don't understand something, you're gonna immediately reject it, and that's where we jump in, and we try to make technology sound easier to user. Because if you jump from, as I mentioned, from a primitive technology, which is talking about microphones now, because that's what we focus on. If you move from a handheld microphone all the way to a ceiling array microphone, the user is going to be overwhelmed. They're going to be, no, this sounds too high tech. I won't be able to manage it. And that's where we jump in. It's not about only using the technology. That's not what we do. It's about explaining how the technology works. Because as soon as you understand how simple the technology is, you're going to immediately accept it. That's one part of it. Educating on the technology, what the technology is available now in the market, what has changed, the evolution. So we put a lot of focus on that. And obviously after that, once the investment is done, we come in and we educate, we train the user on how to use the product, because it's not just we've done with the business. Here's the product. Thank you very much, and we're leaving. No, we put a lot of effort, because at the end of the day, it is it is our name that's connected to the solution, and we want to make sure that everybody knows how to use it and they're comfortable in using the product. And again, as soon as when you start small, that's just gonna create a domino effect, and people are gonna understand that yes, it's not as before. Technology has changed. As you mentioned, 10 years ago it was 2 terabyte. I didn't know that, to be honest. I thought it was because I had a USB drive. It was 16 GB, I guess. I don't remember, but I thought that was it. Wow, that was amazing. Now that same USB is 126 and 256 GB. I'm sorry, a tera.
Terrible.
You know, sorry, yeah. See, yeah, I only focus on audio now. So yeah, it is very important for a solution provider, a technology provider, manufacturer to educate the customers, and not only on how to use it, but on the technology itself.
And I think so that's a very key thing, if I may add, because until unless you educate your extended arm, be it a channel partner, be it a service provider, they don't fully understand the features and the benefits. So either they understand the features or they understand the benefits, but the consumer wants to know both, that what feature brings what benefits. So we call it the university. So we have a WD University, which is a virtual online teaching portal, and we certify people, which are our service providers, by imparting these technical knowledges whenever a new product is getting launched, that they should know the T's and C's before sitting in front of a customer. At times we see making false promises because they don't know about the product that way. So just to ensure that they are educated, that what's that problem point we have tried to solve by coming out with this new solution.
So we kind of have the same approach, but we wanted to go one step further and educate the end user, universities, for example, because again, because the solution provider provides a complete solution, so it's hard for them to focus on one single aspect of the project. And although they do a good job, our approach is a little bit different. Again, it's not only on the product; it's about teaching them on the importance of audio. As I mentioned previously, a lot of people tend to overlook on the audio part, and that's our job to educate the end users what is the importance of audio. So yeah, and we've been very active since till the pandemic. We were doing instructor-led trainings, going to these end users, bringing them in one room and educating them on the importance of it. Not only that, teaching them about audio, how audio works and stuff like that. We've been really successful. I mean, it made a big impact with these customers, because at the end of the day, it is kind of like an additional topic for them. No one thought about learning about audio, and it could be interesting, how it works. At the end of the day, it's physics, and whoever is interested in physics, he's gonna enjoy the discussion, basically. So yeah, I believe it's very important for manufacturers to focus on education.
So that brings me to one very important question, and that's the dollars behind everything. So like we just discussed, that there are some early adopters, there are some laggers, but it's usually you upgrade from something to the next level and then go to the next level. But with how this pandemic affected the transformation was that it almost asked the laggers to come and start running with those who were early adopters, who had a good infrastructure in place, who had probably well-trained faculty or students who were already used to using a digital platform. So now my question here, open to everyone, is what the educators they need from how they can work, and they are working with the providers, how you both come together to make sure that when we talk about the balance between cost versus quality, none of them are compromised. So I would open it first to Dr. Alex and Inas.
I guess I'm the one that signs the checks with the vendors. That's an interesting question, and just reflecting on the conversation prior to this will lead into the budget discussion. I think we have to make sure we don't lose sight of the fact that education is truly right up there with healthcare as a people business. That's it. You know, airlines, we're in the people business. No, you move people. You're not in the people business, you move people. Educators, health, we deal with people. And we have to be very, very mindful and not lose sight of that. Technology, it's a tool. It's nothing more than tool than any other tool that we have available to us. And we're very cognizant of the bright, shiny object, because faculty love the bright, shiny. They want the next, the latest, the greatest kind of thing. And when you're dealing with a population like HCT, we've got 23,000 students. You have to aggregate your cost over an entire system. A smaller private institution, maybe that runs off of philanthropic revenue, can afford to play with some of those kind of things. A federally funded government organization doesn't have that luxury. But to the vendors in the room, we do have volume. So it's the old cost volume calculation that comes into play, and that makes it a really interesting conversation. We're not going to compromise on quality. The whole concept of reality, I always remind people that if you have to put an adjective in front of the word reality, it's not real. Okay, so let's just get that on the table. There's time and a place. You know, pilots train in simulators, but they still require a certain number of hours of flying time. Surgeons play in the cave to get an idea as to where they're going to go in the human body before an operation, but they still have to play with human tissue. So we're not going to get dragged into the bright, shiny object conversation. We can't afford to, but at the same time, we will bounce along this path of access. I think that's going to be one of the biggest things. On the non-actual classroom stuff, the whole automation side, that's of great interest. But you know, anything that can help us reduce our costs on the administrative side, that's a great conversation to have, and we're moving forward down that path. It's also impacting where the students are going to have to learn. Automation by far is going to be the greatest impactor on our curriculum by far. If you look at, you know, you mentioned up and coming positions. What about the ones that are getting turfed? Something like a legal assistant, which used to be so big, is now completely automated. Strong legal firms, they don't have people reading contracts. They have computers reading contracts. That's been the big myth about the legal industry. Oh, you need a lawyer. No, you don't. You need somebody that can read words well. Computer can read words. So that's going to impact things on the non-classroom side of things, as well as the whole side of automation. So I think we can't lose sight of the fact that I think the education sector as a whole is prepared to play with stuff. Come play in our sandbox. That's what I'm doing this semester. I told our entire faculty, if there was ever a chance to play in a sandbox, this semester is it. They've got freedom to do so many things, to try so many things. So let's take an opportunity that is a once in a lifetime to take advantage of these things. But at the same time, somebody's got to pay for it. And even in this environment, the UAE, they're feeling the pinch of the oil and gas revenues dropping. We've seen that. They've consolidated 5 ministries over the summer. They've done a whole bunch of things that are indicative of where industry's got to face that reality. But by no means it shouldn't stop progress. So
I think it's important to see what value system the vendor is bringing to the conversation, right? I mean, as HP, for example, we have a North Star, which is to say that we enable better learning outcomes for 100 million people by 2025. So when that's our North Star, we obviously gravitate towards the right duty of care programs. So we are very conscious that we shouldn't be seen as ambulance chasers, trying to bring the latest shiny things in. And we actually launched a program called Be Online, which was to help all the universities and schools actually take on a remote learning environment without any cost. So we actually bore the cost for the whole academic year. And in countries like South Africa and Kenya and the southern sort of side of Africa, we're actually running it till the end of January, because that's when their new academic year is going to start. So the idea is that we are willing to give the education community time to understand what's really happening, not to just chase the latest shiny thing, but we will be part of your sandbox. We will come and give you tools and solutions which you can play with for a whole academic year. You then have the capability of understanding what's really working for you, and you also have in parallel the ability to work your budgets for you, right? So at the start of the new academic year is when we would say that let's have a conversation around the commercials on what you have understood, what you want. But we are also triangulating that with the government, right? So what we're doing is that we're trying to create the right PPPs. So we're trying to create the right private-public partnerships. As an example, in South Africa, we're speaking to somebody called Umlombo Foundation, which actually deals in the education sector. We're speaking to UNICEF, which is speaking to the telco providers to zero-rate the solutions, right? So we're bringing that whole ecosystem together so that it's not on one person's purse that the whole burden is put on. But the minute you spread the need of the budget amongst the right players, you're able to bring the best solutions into the industry. So that's, I think, the approach that one needs to take as a solution provider, as a vendor.
Yes, cost is an important element, and that's why as SAP we have a number of programs that help specifically universities with collaboration platforms that we deliver, with experience management platforms that we deliver, with some tools that in the past we have helped universities with for their students to be used. But one important element, and you alluded a little bit on it, is as SAP we are very much trying to help organizations to get their systems up and running better and more productive. Because we focused a lot for the right things on the students, but I mean, the professor was also faced with being at home. And in a number of cases, his systems were not able to support him with everything he had to do from an administrative point of view. So that's where SAP always has been strong in the past, and we help universities around the world in making sure that their finance systems, their HR system, procurement systems are totally automated, integrated, and that way the professor or the teacher, whatever his role is, can focus on teaching, on making sure that his students get better and that they are ready for their next role or whatever they want to do, by minimizing the effort they have to do internally to get their non-teaching part of the job done. And that's where we certainly have worked during these pandemics with increased amounts of universities that had to play a bit of catch up to make sure that they were fully digitalized on the back-end systems. Because, I mean, as you rightfully said, professors a lot of time focus on the shiny thing to be used in the classroom. And then sometimes they forget that what they actually use internally to get the rest of the job done is a bit of stitching work. So helping universities getting that done at the most affordable price to get it done, and certainly with cloud solutions that we offer in a fast way and a scalable way, that's something where SAP certainly has reached out to universities these times and days to help getting that part of the cost better under control. With the events that we have seen where a lot have had to happen online, rather than in-house or inside the building, where you can run around and get things done. I mean, those days were over, of course. And that's where we happily reached out to universities to help out.
So from a Western Digital perspective, I'm sorry we are not giving anything for free. But what we do, but what we do offer is a solution which is future-proof, which is scalable, and make sure that you're getting the best buck for the money, for every dollar which you spend. Simply because we manufacture it. It's not an outsourced solution. We have one of the highest IPs in this when it comes to digital storage. So we know what technology goes in, how it is scalable, what's the future, what needs to be done. So the best thing which we offer, and not only to an educational segment, but to all the sectors, is a future-proof technology, which is scalable with the times. So it's not that this technology gets run out and then you need to invest again in the next 3 to 5 years. You just keep on stacking with the use as it happens. And I think so that's one of the most critical things when it comes to investment, that you invest in something which you can reap the benefits in the long term and is not short term.
So from our point of view, what we realized is that the early adopters, such as HCT, I had a discussion earlier with Dr. Alex, and we kind of mentioned that we had worked together before. But what I noticed that the early adopters know the value of investing in certain technology because they have been doing it for some time and they have the experience, so they understand the value. So they balance the cost. I mean, the cost factor. Of course, they don't go for the shiny stuff, and most of the time, the shiny stuff don't work. So they understand that. The other challenge that we have faced is with the new adopters, is that because they want to catch up quickly, and they don't have the experience, they haven't planned for these things. They usually go for the cost-effective solution, and as from experience, we all know that if you go for the cost-effective solution, that's 90%. It's not going to work. So yes, I think Dr. Alex, he is kind of being a little bit humble, but I'm sure they know what they're investing in because we had the experience with them, with such customers, where they had adopted the technology earlier. So talking about quality and value or cost, we don't let. I'm going to be honest. Our solutions are not cheap. If anything, they're the most expensive in the market in our industry. But then again, we don't compromise on quality at all. So if a customer comes to us, they're coming to us because of the quality, not because of the cost. So we take that aside when we come into our discussion. But what we offer is different solutions. So we keep the quality. Of course, audio is number one for us, and then we cut corners on the features. For example, if you don't need these features, let's take it out. But audio is still there because we cannot compromise on the audio. So because that's our core, that's our focus. But we do have cost-effective solutions, relatively speaking. Another thing that I would like to mention is that adding to Saifuddin's comment about future-proof, we are moving away from hardware now. Our solution, yes, we have the hardware, but they're mostly PC-based, let's call it that way, and it's all future-proof. Hardware-wise, it's going to stay the same, but what we do is we change the software to add AI functionalities, for example. Our microphones currently are smart, they have built-in software, they have built-in DSPs and so on. Coming in the future, I don't want to disclose too much, we will have AI in these microphones. So it's just a matter of updating the software. And that's our focus, that's where we are. We have another product, for example, that has nothing to do with a microphone, but it has to do something about managing these microphones, is a PC-based. So any PC, you can bring your own PC or whatever, it's just a software, we add it there, and we're done. And it's easy to update the software. So as far as investment is concerned, for us, yes, we know that budgets are tight, we understand that, but the solutions that we offer will work for at least 10 years. We have products in the market that have been working for 25 years straight, and people refuse to change it. Of course, it's bad for business, but this is the quality and the return of investment that the customers are looking for to begin with.
I think starting from the requirement itself, what we've noticed is everyone's been asking for something touchless, So they don't wanna actually physically hold something, otherwise you're gonna have to sanitize it. So they wanted something touchless from an audiovisual perspective. They wanted something frictionless for the educators. So, come inside, make it work really fast without any problems. And like Usman had mentioned, everyone wants, and as Dr. Alex had mentioned, everyone wants a POC. Everyone wants a proof of concept of how this is gonna be worked before they actually invest in it. And we're actually happy about it because ultimately we don't want to compromise on our future, future of at the end of the day, our leaders, our future leaders of the world. So from our perspective, we've really engaged, really understood exactly how to do it right for the end user, for the client, for the operators, and then working with them on a very hand by hand, side by side approach to get what they really need, rather than what might be a want from a teacher or a want from a student. To get it perfectly right is what we're looking for. Whether it takes a month, 2, 3, 6. Currently, right now, we're doing over 100 POCs on different venues and campuses, and we're happy for that. So our goal is ultimately, make sure that the future is right, and the future is perfect for these educators and for these facilities. Our game is always long term, and that's our approach to this.
Shant, you mentioned the microphone in this room, which I don't see, and I thought we would have something around us. So, is it that one?
No, that's a camera.
That's a camera. Where is
Well-
the mic?
Well, if you couldn't find it, that means we're doing a good job, basically. So that piece of square ceiling tile over there, that's the microphone, and there's another one over there which is completely white. So these are the new type of microphone technology that is out there in the market. I could kind of explain to you how the microphone works, but I don't want to go there. I'm very passionate about how the microphone works because it's just an amazing piece of technology. Things have been progressed so much in terms of everything, but especially in audio, because as I mentioned, audio has not been didn't change that much in terms of technology, but in the recent years, it's seeing a lot of focus now from the market because the VC application is just blown out of proportion. Everybody's using video conferencing, and now even more because no one can travel. So now people are understanding the value of good audio. So this is one example of the solution that we offer, as Dino mentioned. Now there's a lot of requests. I mean, you're seeing now keeping the distance, social distancing. Not only that, universities want touchless solution. They don't want to engage with anything, but they don't want to touch a microphone where someone else touched the same microphone. Yes, we can sanitize and so on, but that's just complicated. That just it's just complicated, and we don't want that. And again, the whole idea of technology is to make life easier. And yeah, so this is the new technology. And another, since you are mostly in IT, or mostly all of us are in IT, historically audio and video was not part of IT. It was a completely separate entity, let's call it.
Point.
But now it's merged. It's if anything, IT is dominating the industry now.
It used to be part of media and entertainment.
Exactly. Now all these products are over Cat5 cable, and they're on the IT infrastructure. They're on the network. So it's more to do with IT now than AV. Yes, our partners are not happy with that, but again, you need to adapt to the market and to the technology. You need to learn about network now, infrastructure, and so on.
It's a convergence of all the technologies.
Exactly. And this is, again, we're all sitting here in one room because we're all connected in one way or the other. We're capturing the data. You're storing the data. You're analytics, basically. You're getting the reports and so on, and
She's using the HP laptop.
there you go. And we have the teachers as well. So it is a complete ecosystem. We're all doing different things, but at the end, it's a complete ecosystem, and we all have to rely on each other and help each other, basically.
Now, this seems like a good place to end this discussion. Very insightful. We heard how the laggers are now they are coming towards where the early adopters were, how technology is enabling that transition, and how the education system, the training is not about, it's not just about getting degrees, it's about getting your students, the upcoming generation ready for the skills that might be needed, not just about a degree that they can probably focus on just one area. So a very nice discussion, thank you so much. And before I end it, I thank you all for your time and your insights today. And a special thanks to Shore and Western Digital for being our partners, because they kind of brought us all together today, and it was a lovely discussion. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.